We are back. This time with Chris. Chris is from DC, so we have this series of American speakers waking up early for us, which is awesome. And I'm super excited about teams. That's one of those things which I really love. So that's one thing which I super wait. All right, Chris, your turn.
Awesome. Folks, thank you all so much for taking the time out of your schedule, wherever you are in this part of the world. It is pretty amazing what happens when we face this adversity and we can't be together in the ways we want and get a chance to connect with people. And I know I have some former students from different parts of the world, everyone, and some of you I might be meeting for the first time. And what I like to tell everyone who spends time in an event like this is I want you to consider the most valuable thing you could ever ask for is the most valuable thing you could ever give someone, and that's time. And to offer up your time to watch all these wonderful speakers, myself included, I'm just so grateful to be included in the list. It's really awesome. So thank you so much for that. What I'd like to do is I'd like to talk about the concept of teamwork. And I want to step away from more of the mechanics and people like time boxes and stuff like that. And I want to think about it a little bit more of what it really means to be a team. And with regards to that, I'm really excited about the different teams that I have a chance to work with. A little bit about me. This isn't about me, but I just want to tell you, for those who don't know me, my name is Chris Lee, and I'm one of the lucky folks that gets to travel all over the globe to work with professionals like yourself, organizations, and teams to try to go ahead and level up their skills. If you had any questions and wanted to interact with me at all, I'm available all the time. You can hit me up on Twitter, LinkedIn. My email's right there. I don't do any of the swipe right or swipe left, none of that. But if you wanted to reach out, please feel free. And the organization I represent is called Sparkplug Agility. We offer a wide mix of services, concentrating primarily in training, coaching, and consulting. Some of our more requested type of services that are out there are some of the certified type options that you see right there. You've seen a bunch of the speakers, got some amazing trainers that put this on right now. I do some of that as well. If you wanted to reach out to me on any of that, that's awesome. Enough about me. Let me tell you about my favorite team. And it's fitting that I'm speaking with you today in this manner because in an alternate timeline, when current events haven't gone the way they are, and we don't have the circumstances we have where it's tough to even gather, I would actually be in an event that looks exactly like that right now, like at this exact moment as our doors open. The group that I'm so lucky to call my team, we put on an event that's a celebration, believe it or not, around video games once a year. And the reason that this is my favorite team is that we have worked together on these things for over 20 years. And because of that, we've developed a relationship that's different than what most people would call a team. It's a group that it kind of transcends just trying to put something together. These are the most important people to me in my entire life. We've gone through the ups, we've gone through the downs. We're there for the biggest moments in each other's lives. And it's not just trying to get something done, but being there for one another. And there are three words I like to mention when I think about my squad that I'm so lucky to do things like this with. And the three words that come to mind are this: we're a diverse group of people with very different backgrounds, very different ways of thinking, and extremely different personalities. We're aligned, though, in trying to create an environment for some of the most powerful moments in young people's lives. And that's the best feeling in the universe to me. But I will tell you this. The third word I would say is that we're family. If something happened to me, I know that my wife would be probably the first call. But after that, some of these folks, they would get called as well. And I'm thinking of them right now. Like at this exact moment, I would be with them. And because of the way the world is, I'm not. And while that's saddening, I'm really excited to be able to share a little bit about what I think a team is, thinking of my squad while I do that. So what I want to let you know is we're going to be doing a little play along at home. So what I need you to do, for those of you, if you have any of these handy, you might want to go ahead and grab some sticky notes. The reason why is that I would like you to go ahead and you want to peel off about 9 of them. And if you don't have sticky notes, that's okay. You could just use a piece of paper or just type some stuff down if you want. But you're going to need 9 little boxes. And on each of those stickies, what I would want you to do is I want you to put a number in the top left corner, starting at 1 and going all the way to 9, because I'm going to show you 9 statements. And when I show you these statements, I want you to think of the people that you're around the most, the people that you would call your team. And when I show you these statements, you're going to be putting some numbers on these pieces of paper, something to think about as we talk. So that's what I'd like you to do. Go ahead. For the, some people might be shuffling a little bit. I want you to take 5 seconds to go ahead and just get a couple sticky notes set up just like that. Okay. Let's take 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right. Hopefully we're ready to go. Here's what I want to do. I want to start off with this. Here's the first statement I want to share with you. Thinking of the people that you work with most of the time, that you would call your team, here's the first statement I want to mention. The people that I'm around, I consider the people I work with the most to be a real team. What numbers would you want to write when you see that statement? Well, the scale we're going to work on is strongly disagree to strongly agree, ranging from a 0 to a 5. And on that first sticky note that you have a number 1 on, I want you to think, reading that statement, what number would I put? Thinking of my team. Anywhere, wherever you like. I want you to write that number in the middle of that sticky note and draw a circle around it. Take 5 seconds to reread it. Draw that number. 5. All right. When you're thinking about that, it's like, yeah, we're a real team. Well, what does that really mean? Because when you ask people, oh, what's a team? Oh, it's a team that all sits around the same table. They're all on the same Slack channel. And that's the scary thing, is that just because you're on the same contract or you wear the same lanyard, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're a team. Here's a way I want you to think about. If you had to define a team in one sentence, this is what I would offer up. A team is a small number of people that have a complementary set of skills. They're committed to a common purpose, a common set of performance goals tied to that purpose, and a common, shared, and agreed upon working approach for which they hold themselves mutually accountable. That's a pretty big sentence, isn't it? So thinking about that sentence, this is what I would define as a team. Think about that first sticky you wrote. Did you write a 0? Was it a 5? Was it somewhere in the middle? And that's okay. You're doing whatever. Anything you're doing is fine. You're doing something that's better than doing nothing. But when you think about it that way, wow, that one sentence has a lot of pieces to it. What we're going to do in this talk is we're actually going to chip away at these and look at each of these sections to think about, here are the things we want to consider and the questions we want to ask. So now that you see that, I would ask you, do you think you're a real team? Don't answer just yet. Let's take a look at this next statement. Statement number 2, your team that you work with, the people you work with the most. Take a look at this one. Members can convene easily and frequently without a lot of unnecessary coordination. Same scale as before. I want you to go ahead, find the sticky note with the number 2 on it. And in the middle of it, right there, choose a number between 0 and 5. Put it right in the middle. I'm going to give you 5 seconds to do that. And a 1. Boom. Maybe you drew 0. Maybe it's a 5. It's okay. But when you're thinking about how can we actually huddle up, you might have encountered things like I have where it's just hard to get everybody together. It's just really hard because maybe there's too many of us. Well, that's the tough part, because too many teams grow to a place where it's a little bit unwieldy. Teams can range into anything from 2 to 25 people or even more. But most of the effective teams that I've read about, done the research on, have been lucky enough to both be a part of and observe, they normally number less than 10. And when you think about people working together, there are connections between everybody you're there. There are lines of communication, relationships you have to manage. And I want you to consider this. If you have a team that's anywhere from 3 to 6 people, think about the number of lines of communication. It's a decent amount. Think about the bonds you have with these other people. How strong are they? Think about how much you have to keep in your head just to relationship manage between all those people. It's a lot. Well, if we add a couple more people, suddenly those lines start to overlap a little bit more. It starts to get a little bit more noisy. So you occasionally in an organization, they might be like, oh, our team is really big. Our team is really big. And there's a lot of reasons that'll happen. Sometimes people say we need to have the right skills, or there's just too much work to do, or the contract says we have to. But take a look what happens after you go past 10 people. The lines of communication, the relationships you have to think about, and those bonds, it gets to be a little bit too much. And that's what I want you to think about. So when you think about, is my team small enough in number? What would you say? Yeah. No. Hey, I'm not sure. And think about that sticky you just wrote. What number did you write? We can convene easily and frequently. Imagine trying to get 14 people on the same call. Heck, we've got hundreds right now. Appreciate that. But imagine trying to get everyone on a regular basis. It's a little bit trickier. So here's another statement I want to go ahead and throw out. This is statement number 3. Thinking of the people you work with the most, members can introduce new skills, new or supplemental, technical or functional skills as needed. You're trying to do a job, and hey, we need to learn how to do this thing because we don't know it, or we need to level up a little bit here. Can you introduce new things into your team? New skills. I want you to use the same scale as before. I want you to find the sticky note with a number 3 on it. And I want you to put the number that you would think of from that scale right in the middle of that sticky note. Draw a circle around it. I'm going to give you 5 seconds. And 1. Boom. There are too many teams that I work with that say, oh, it's just really hard to bring something new in. Wonder why that is. This is the first statement, but I'm actually going to show you 2 more before I dive into some things. So keep those people in mind. And here's the second, or rather the 4th statement. Take a look at this one. Thinking of your folks you work with all the time, members can make necessary trade-offs and decisions about how to proceed. Teams normally have a bunch of options that they can look at, like, oh, we could do this, we could do this, we could do this. Can they make those trade-offs? And can they make decisions as a group? Same scale as before. Find that sticky note with a number 4 on it. Put that number right in the middle. Draw a circle around it. Take about 5 seconds. Okay, so you got 4 stickies. Let's look at the 5th one real quick. Here's the 5th one. Thinking of that same group, members possess the capacity for effective communication and constructive conflict. It's interesting when you say conflict to people, they normally have a more negative feel of it. But think about like constructive conflict and effectively communicating with one another. Thinking of your team, do you have that type of capacity? Same scale as before. Sticky note with the number 5 on it. Pick a number from 0 to 5, put it in the middle, draw a circle around it. Take 5 seconds. So thinking about that mix, here's the trap that so many groups fall into. When teams go, we need to have skills, skill sets. This is where the concept of cross-functionality comes through. When teams are trying to form, however you're trying to work, you go, what are the skills we need to do the job? Do we need a little bit of that? A decent amount? A lot of it? The best in the world? This can influence how you hire people, how you interview. But here's the trap that I was referring to. Most of the time, organizations are only concerned about the technical or functional expertise. This is what you would see on like a job posting. You need a complement of that, though. You need a mix there, because imagine a set of doctors that are trying to get a new procedure or some new medicine or some new treatment through a legal process. Do you want them writing the legal like documentation about that? No, they would probably hopefully work with a group of lawyers to go ahead and author those documents and help that. But you probably wouldn't want your doctor to fill in as your lawyer. Likewise, you probably wouldn't want to call up your lawyer if you weren't feeling too good. I have a great relationship with both my doctor and my lawyer, and they need to stay in their lane. That's what they do. They're great, but they need to do what they need to do. The thing is that this isn't the mix I'm talking about. There's some other skills you have to consider. What type of problem solving and decision making skills do you have on that squad? Think about this. Do you have a friend or a coworker who's really, really smart and they can't think their way out of a paper bag? You probably have that friend right now. You might be sitting with them right now. They might be on the call. You can pick on them later. But think about that. You need to be able to evaluate these alternatives, make some trade-offs, figure out which way we're going to go. If you don't have problem solving and decision making skills to go along with all that horsepower, maybe we're missing a really key ingredient in this entire recipe. But there's another secret ingredient that doesn't get enough credence, and it's this: interpersonal skills, soft skills. And when I say this, there are organizations that pay dearly for those that can actually interact with people and have those interpersonal skills. Can you communicate with people? Can you be in that place where you can have constructive conflict? You probably have a friend or a coworker that is really, really smart, can really, really make decisions, and you would never want to put them in front of a prospective client. I have some friends I'm thinking of right now. You have to have a mix of all of these things to actually say, we're really a team, that we have the skills that we need. And that's the question I would ask you. Do you have the technical or functional skills or the potential to learn them on your team? Do you have the decision-making and problem-solving horsepower or the capacity to learn how to do that? And do you have the interpersonal skills you need? Just right here, you might be already going, wow, there's some things I need to think about. There's some questions I need to ask. Because I ask, hey, do you have the right mix of skills on your team? Some people are like, yes. Some people are like, no. Some people are like, I'm not sure. When I show them that, you can probably tell which way the needle goes. I want to go ahead and talk about this statement right here. This is the sixth statement. Thinking of the group that you work with on a regular basis, consider this. It's a little bit of a long one. Think about your team's purpose. Our purpose is a meaningful team purpose as opposed to a broader, more organizational purpose, or on the flip side, just one individual's purpose, for example, like the team leader. Think about the reason that this group exists. What's your purpose? Is it a real team purpose? Is it broader and more abstract? Or is it someone's pet project? Thinking about the same scale, find the sticky note that has a number 6 on it. And I want you to pick from 0 to 5, put that in the middle of that sticky, draw a circle around it. If you have to read it again, that's okay. Take 5 seconds. Okay. When it comes to the reason a group comes together and their purpose, something gets missed. But there's some other parts to that I want to mention as well, because there's this another statement I want you to consider in the same context. When you talk about performance, a lot of people like to talk about metrics. I like to talk about behaviors and attributes. So when you're thinking about those things and the results in these collective work products, the team's performance goals are directly tied to that team's purpose, the thing we just saw in statement number 6. Do you have some performance goals that are tied to your purpose? What I want you to do, same scale, find the sticky that's got a 7 on it. Read that, thinking of that last statement as well as this one. I want you to pick a number from 0 to 5 and put it in the middle of that sticky. Take 5 seconds. Okay. When it comes to performance, be very, very careful once you start getting into the world of metrics. Because one thing I always tell people is that if you can't measure what's important, what you can measure becomes important. And suddenly behaviors can change. You have to be very careful with that. When it comes to performance in this context, you have to have some sort of purpose and some things to look at to say, are we making this purpose a reality? And teams need to have a common and meaningful purpose. This is going to be to set the tone. This is the reason the team exists. You have to have something that really, really puts some fire in your belly. There has to be a pretty good reason to get out of bed early in the morning and leave that wonderful, safe place that you are. Me, I mean, do I want to leave? I got a set of cats I love, little orange kitten. Sometimes comes and sits with me in the morning. Like, how you doing, buddy? There'd be a pretty good reason for me to leave that cat and go ahead and leave there. So you have to have this purpose. But additionally, you have to have some goals tied to that purpose. They're an integral part of it. What are you going to look at that says the reason for us to exist as a squad? What are we going to look at? And the combination of these is essential for teams to exhibit what it really means to be a real team. So the question I would ask here, there's a couple of them. Hey, what's your purpose? Does everybody on your team articulate it the same way, with the same emotion, with the same passion, with the same energy? What kind of goals do we have? Are they tied to that purpose? How often do we talk about them? How often do we look at them? Are they understood by everyone? And did the team come up with them together? These are some big questions to ask. But here's another one, a big one to think about. The team's working approach, thinking of your team, the team's working approach requires all members to contribute equivalent amounts of real work. Think about that for a second. Everyone's pulling the sled. Everyone's got the same amount of rope. Here we go. Thinking of your team, consider that same scale from strongly disagree to strongly agree. Find the sticky note with a number 8 on it. Reading that statement, think about your squad for how you work together. Does it call for everyone to pull their own weight? Pick that number, put it in the middle of that sticky, draw a circle around it. Let's take 5 seconds. Boom. Some of you are like, whoa. A lot of times when I work with teams, they say, oh, we work like this, we work like this. And the question I always ask is, well, why did this group choose to work this way? And they say, oh, well, they didn't have a choice in it. Doesn't sound too inspiring, does it? Anytime you force someone to work in a certain way, it can't always be too fun. Because this is how I want you to think of this. However a team is going to work together is how they work. And they need to together develop an approach that's understood by all participants, where everyone has a common understanding of this is how we do business, and this is how we're going to make that purpose a reality. When everyone has a hand in how we work together and everyone's contributed to it, that is a very, very helpful way. There is no shortage of how do we work together as a team from any of the frameworks you hear about, all these different techniques. You got books. We have all of human history in our phones. There's so much out there that you can try. But the best way to think of it is how do we do business and how are we going to make our purpose a reality? But this is the secret ingredient here. Teams should expect to spend an equal amount of time crafting their purpose as well as crafting the way they're going to work together. Bringing it back to those other teams I've talked about before. They're like, how do I make this work with this, and all these parameters? I have 5 people spread out over 7 time zones and they speak 13 languages. I know that's on purpose. But it's like, how did you pick this particular way of working if you already knew there were going to be technological, cultural, language barriers that were going to make things really, really challenging? They said, well, we didn't develop this way of working. How's that feel? Normally not too good. Let me go ahead and give you the 9th statement. Here's the 9th statement. This is kind of a big one. I want you to think about your team. Think about your team as you work together. You're trying to do all this stuff. These are people that you spend a lot of time with. And these team members, they're individually and jointly accountable for both the team's purposes, their goals, their approach, and collective work products. Think about that one again, real quick. Not only individually, but jointly responsible for those 4 things. Same scale. Same scale. Find the sticky note with a 9 on it. What I want you to do is read that one again. Thinking of your squad, put a number in the middle of that sticky note and draw a circle around it. Take 5 seconds. All right. So this sticky is a little bit big, and there's probably a word that bounces out to you right there. Accountable. And this is one of those big words out there that teams need to discuss, because when most organizations hear the word accountability, you know what they think of? Blame. It's not how I want you to think of it. I want you to think of it this way. Accountability is really all about the sincere promises that we make to one another, to our teammates, rooted in commitment and trust. Commitment and trust. Sincere promises. Here is how I like to share with the folks that I work with how to think about accountability. Take a look at this. Only time you probably ever hear me read from a slide. By promising to hold ourselves accountable to the team's goals, we each earn the right to express our own views about all aspects of the team's effort and to have our views receive a fair and constructive hearing. Nothing is more frustrating than not being heard. And nothing can be more frustrating than when you see something going off the rails a little bit, team's not doing so good, something's falling off the wayside, or a team member's not really helping out the way they said they would, that you can't speak up. Accountability is rooted in that. If we're rallied around this idea of here is something that we are trying to accomplish as a squad, that means that if I see something that isn't in line with that, I should be able to speak up. I should be able to have my voice heard. I should be able to call something out. But I can't do that if we haven't rallied around that thing that we're trying to do together. We can't really get our heads around that really important thing in the middle if we haven't gotten everyone's ideas incorporated into whatever it is we're trying to accomplish. We can't do that maybe because we're really afraid of conflict. We can't really have that passionate and heated, sometimes emotional debate. I've been in so many conversations where, it's a heightened state of emotion, voices are raised, but you're trying to do the right thing. That's okay. You might not be able to have those passionate debates because you're worried about whatever you say might be used against you later, and you become more guarded, kind of veil your comments. And what that means is maybe you don't trust the people you're around. That's a dangerous place to be in. And they all kind of build on each other. This is how I like to think about accountability. And taking that into account, no group can ever truly become a team until it can hold itself accountable to one another. I want you to think about the subtle but critical difference between these two statements. The boss holds me accountable. It's a little bit different than we hold ourselves accountable as a team. These are some things to think about. So when I say, hey, do you hold each other accountable? It's like, yeah, No, not really sure. I've met plenty of people who have no problem speaking their mind, but what are they actually talking about? And are they rallied around some things? When it's not really the team trying to pull their weight to make something real, you hear things like, oh, well, I got my work done. Well, if Brad got his story done, that doesn't really help the squad. There's no real result at the end on that. That's like saying the hole's on your side of the boat. It's worthless. Still all going to sink. So here's some things I want to recap on that. The questions I would ask for you is, hey, are you small enough in number? What would you answer? Yes? No? I'm not sure. Do you have the complementary set of skills you need? Thinking about technical and functional skills, decision making and problem making skills, or those interpersonal and soft skills? Do you have the right mix of all of those? Yeah. No, not really sure. It's okay. Think about your purpose. Do you have a purpose? Can you articulate it? Would everybody on your team articulate it in the same way, with the same vigor, with the same emotion, with the same energy? Do you even know what it is? Did you craft it? Is it the team's purpose? These are good questions to ask. What about performance goals? Did the team come up with them? Do they require collective work products? Is it something you talk about on a regular basis? Is it something that's achievable? And even if it's not measurable, is it something that you know that you're tracking towards? Do you have a working approach where everyone was able to chip in on it, where they identified how are we going to make that purpose a reality? And did you spend the equal amount of time crafting that working approach as you did on the purpose? I had one student once that says, we don't have a purpose and we were told what to do. So technically, Chris, the answer is yes. It's kind of sad. I mean, we had a good chuckle about it. But lastly, do we hold ourselves accountable as a team? Yeah? Nah. Maybe. I don't know. Kind of in the middle. These are things that I encourage you to consider and questions that you should ask. Because as you look back at all those 9 stickies you have numbers ranging from 0 to 5. That is just scratching the surface of some of the activities I run with teams where there are numbers of statements tied to each of these things. And what I'll do is I'll add all those up and we average it out. And I say, hey, if you're seeing anything from like a 0 to a 3, you definitely want to talk about that. If it's between a 3 and a 4, you might want to talk about it. And if it's between a 4 and a 5, that's probably something that you want to celebrate. That's a good thing. We have this. This is good. But you have to explore this a little bit more. So some takeaways I want to give you is this. First is this. I want you to always consider the mix of skills, but don't just concentrate on technical and functional. I want you to consider all 3 of those types we saw. You want to revisit your team's purpose as a group. It's not just the team lead and the manager will sit there. No. Everyone together. Why are we together? What's our performance need? What is the urgency of us doing the work that we have? You want to ensure that whatever goals you come up with as a squad tie to that purpose. What is your purpose and how will you make sure that it's a reality? You want to spend an equal amount of time crafting the way you work as well as whatever that purpose might be. And you probably want to sit down and discuss, what does being accountable really mean? Talk about it. Imagine if you just put one word on the wall, accountable, and you ask someone, think about it for a minute, and like grab a sticky note, draw a picture of whatever comes in your mind when you see accountable. Ask someone, hey, share your picture with us and why you drew it. You'd be surprised what answers you might come up with. The thing about all this is that teamwork is hard. This stuff is hard because we might have uncovered a couple of things that you're like, wow, we have a little bit of deficiencies here. But I'll tell you this right now. Teamwork is hard, but it's worth it. With what my team is going through right now, we have some bumps and bruises and some speed bumps and some mountains to climb that we're dealing with. And I know that we'll get through it. It's hard, but it's worth it. And it feels good to be a part of the team. But I do have a request. When it comes to when you're working with other people, I have a really big request coming up. It's an ask. People really are interested sometimes in these concepts. If you would like to read some more about this, one of the biggest inspirations on me and my work with teams is this book right here, The Wisdom of Teams. This is not an Agile book. This is a people book, and I cannot recommend it enough. It's called The Wisdom of Teams. You can find it online to purchase. If you can't find it, just send me a note, reach out to me and let me know. I can point it to you. But this is great. I actually had a student take my copy in class once. I had it on a table for them to look at, and they're like, oh, thanks, Chris. And I took it. Who knew? But this is my request. If you're working with other people, you want to treat them a certain way. I'm a big fan of if you're nice to me, I'm going to be nice to you. But breaking it down to a couple pieces, you want to treat other people with humanity. You want to treat them with decency. You want to treat them with class. You want to treat them with grace. At the end of the day, we're on the same team. Try to consider these four things, and I think we can probably start to get through some of these tough things we're dealing with the world. So, folks, that's what I have for you today. Thank you all so much for spending your valuable time with me. If you enjoyed the way I work, it would be awesome to see you. Just send me a note. I've got our public events are posted up for the end of the year, and whatever you need, please let me know. But seriously, folks, I'm gonna give you thank you so much for those of you staying up all over the world, those who waked up early, hanging out. I really appreciate it. That's what I've got.
Well, thank you very much. It was super cool. I have a lot of notes from it. And one thing which states in my sticky notes is like revisit the purpose, like together, because I think that was like our tiny weakness. And I was like wondering during your talk, like, what do you see as the biggest weakness? Like, you go around those teams, you're playing this sort of a game with them. So, what is typical weakness?
It's probably a tie between a couple things. I'll just mention them out of just in a random order. A lot of times the focus is just on the skills needed to do the job and not considering the chemistry between those people, like from an interpersonal standpoint. Think about like when you go to a job interview, we have a coding test we want you to take, but it's like, I don't even really want to sit in the same room as this person. So they kind of mix on that. You know exactly what I'm talking about, where we only want one of the 6 ingredients. So that's one of the big ones. The other is kind of tied together where there is no purpose. And I'm fully aware that it's sometimes, I didn't get a chance to pick my team. We didn't form together. Oh, Chris is his happy path. And for those of you who know me, I come from the school of hard knocks. Like I grew up in delivery in the trenches. I'm never going to forget that. But you have to at least have some kind of reason you come together. And if that reason is to respond to customer tickets in a timely fashion, that's not going to get me really any fire in my belly. So if your purpose isn't really something you can hang your hat on, how are you ever going to come up with performance goals tied to that purpose? That link almost never exists, because when people hear performance, they go, we have code coverage. All of our tests run. This is the amount of user stories we finished. And it's like they're looking at the wrong thing. So I would say those skills, that's a big one that comes up. Lack of a purpose, and then not having goals tied to it. Oh, and the last one is being forced to work in a certain way. That's probably the biggest one, Zuzi, that I would mention, is that when I'll go work with a team, they go, well, this is how we do business. And I'm like, well, how did you guys come up with this? And it was, we hired someone to come and tell us how to work. And it's like, oof. So that would probably be it.
Yeah. What was the most difficult team situation you've been in as a team member?
Boy. Well, from a emotional standpoint, what we're going on with right now with COVID-19 and trying to make things happen internally to that team, that's been tough just from an emotional standpoint. But from more of an applicable way towards our conference attendees, the teams that I grew up on were not everybody has the same lanyard. There would be multiple contracting agencies working together along with different departments and agencies within the United States government. And when you had that, you had, 4, 6, 7, 8 different viewpoints, different definitions of agility, different definitions of success, and also different agendas. Because if you have one particular team member that their job is to try to get in, grow customer intimacy, increase influence, and sell a few more seats so we can push some of our teaming partners out. When you get into that, it gets really, really crazy. That's what I had to navigate for most of my career. And it's going to be really challenging for a group like that to really feel like a team. You have to have like a watershed moment, luckily, that a couple that I've been able to experience to really break through that. But it's hard for a lot of teams because I'm sure some of you on the other side of the camera are like, oh yeah, well, hey, you got a friend in me. It's not easy. If this stuff was easy, a lot of us wouldn't be doing this for a living.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Building a team is the most hard, which brings us to the question from Peter. He asked, if you have a team of 15 to 20 people, that works quite well, but not in the measures of your talk, would you rather develop them as is or split them into smaller groups?
I would never split somebody up just to do it. If it works, let it rock. I'm never a fan of coming in to tell someone you should do this. It's, hey, this is how we work. Hey, that's cool. I'm trying to be accepting from that standpoint. Like even when it comes to agility, when I work with organizations, I tell them, I say, I want to present you with an option so you can make an informed decision, but I'm not going to force you to do any of this stuff. You don't have to do a single thing I'm sharing with you. That's what I tell people. And they say, well, the person who came before said, thou shalt do the agile. And I'm like, that's not, I grew up as a traditional project and program manager, and it was a long journey for me to have a mindset shift. So I've been, both worlds, and there's tons of work out there for every other way we work. And I say, do what feels right, and be honest with yourself. Who am I to tell anybody that they should change how they work? I just would rather help them explore some alternatives. And I ask the question, hey, do you like how you work? And a lot of times it's like, yeah, we're okay with it. It's like, what? Let's try to make that a little bit better. I wouldn't split it up. So Peter, thanks for the question. If it's working, hey, let it rock. But you probably have some challenges. Maybe figure out which of those challenges is most important and talk about it as a squad.
Nice. Then Derek is asking how you got organizations to move from hybrid models.
Could you ask one more time, Susie?
How you got organizations to move from hybrid models.
Oh, hybrid model. Sorry, I want to hear that. Yeah. When I see that, I always kind of scratch my head, because I tell every organization they should be honest with one another. When I hear hybrid, just so for the person who asked the question, I'm going to interpret that as we used to work maybe in a traditional way, and we're trying to do the agile. Let's call it that way. When I see hybrid approach, I say, what are you really trying to do? That's the first question I was like, what are you trying to do? For instance, one of my friend's firms, it's like, what are you really trying to do? It's like, Chris, don't really care about this agile stuff. We just need to win the contract. So we're going to put the agile terms on there. We just need to get the win. Hey, you know what? They're honest about it. That's fine. But like if an organization says, we need to do the agile stuff, I go, cool. What benefits are you hoping to really realize in this organization? And I'll start kind of on that. And then depending on the organization, I might keep going one path, or I might ask the big zinger right up front. And I say, well, what do you think agility is? And then I try to ask that in some one-on-one questions and be like, well, hey, here it is. Because from my standpoint, if we don't embody this mindset of the values that we really live, the choices that we make, and the principles that we embody, none of it matters. I mean, none of it matters at all. Some of the workshops I do with teams and organizations, I can actually show empirically, like maybe we don't have the agile mindset. We would never change responding to change over following a plan, for instance. It's like, if we never think of it that way, why are you even trying to blend anything together? Just be yourselves and be honest. That's what I tell everyone. You got to be honest with yourself as both an individual, a team, and as an organization.
Mike is asking, when you're in a situation where there are environmental challenges to forming teams, for example, where leadership is a barrier, etc., how then do you measure your success as a coach in that process? How do you measure a success as a coach in that process? And do you just do all that you can as best as you can and just take heart in that? Or how do you do that?
So was it Mike who asked that?
Mike, yes.
Mike, I have a feeling that's probably a 5-minute question where I have to listen to you for a little bit. There's probably a lot in there, but I'm going to key in on one piece of it where you said, how do I know that I'm being successful as a coach in there? Well, part of that goes to, what does success look like for you? Let's just keep this about you for right now. Yeah, how do you deal with everyone's got challenges. Everyone has, challenge here, or there's this, or a contract. We got that. But let's keep this about ourselves for a second. How do you know that you're being successful? And what I like to do is I ask people, I say, how do you know if you've had a good day? Who would you ask? Do you know what you'd look at? How do you know if you've had a good week? What about a good month? What about a good quarter? What about a good year? And when I say that, the light bulbs start to go off, because it's like, how do you know that you've had a good day? Well, the building didn't catch on fire. Okay, cool. But who have you had a conversation with about what success looks like? So in a contracting type environment where you're coming in as some sort of professional to provide a service, what did you talk about before you signed the contract? What does success look like for the engagement? Is it really to come in and when I see coach, there's a whole nother conversation that people, other speakers may talk about. Far too often I run into people where they say, oh, I'm a coach, and people are not really looking for coaching. They're looking for guidance more from a consultant, where a consultant is going to go ahead and influence somebody at their request, as opposed to a coach that's there in a more partnership type role to help somebody explore the possibilities while not making the recommendations themselves. So if you're hired as a coach and it's, you know what you should do, from my standpoint, and a lot of my peers, a lot of the people that you're probably hearing speaking, that's not really coaching. But thinking about if you are hired in any capacity to provide a service, how do you know what success looks like? Revisit whatever contract you signed, revisit with whoever brought you in and say, how do I know that I've had a good day? Those conversations will show a lot of things. If you can leave that conversation with 3 things to look at, you're moving the needle because you got to do the best with what you got. Zuzi, what else you got?
That's really a wisdom here. Let me thinking about many things. So,
Awesome.
Next one, Martin is asking, to change or improve team interaction or performance takes time. From your experience, is it about 1 to 2 months or 1 to 2 quarters at least, just to see fast enough that I'm failing and should try it differently? So I guess the question is like, how fast is it?
Oh,
How fast do you see?
I never like giving it depends. But this is where I want you to think about a couple things. First, I'm not going to give you it depends, because when I hear terms like performance, again, I want you to think less metrics and more behaviors, attributes, and how we interact with one another. Think about like all of the various, I know not everyone's a sports fan, but think about some of those different sporting leagues that would play games and go for championships. And you'll see franchises, be it a football team, an American football team, a hockey team, however they do, or even like musicians. Think about the groups and how they the franchises that people are like, wow, that's a championship squad. That's one of the best organizations. That is one of the best franchises in the entire league. When you think about that, it's how they act, what habits they exhibit, what behaviors that you can observe. And that's what I think of with performance. Bringing it back to the timing of things, sometimes you can catch lightning in a bottle, and when you put people together, they have that chemistry right out of the gate. And those are some of the best teams. So you might start off and everyone is rocking and rolling. And what that means is when people were hired, they all had a shared understanding of what success looks like for them, as well as the squad. Maybe they've crafted a purpose and they're all really excited to share it with other people. They work together to figure out how they would interact with one another. There are groups that can get that done, no problem. But sometimes it takes time. Remember how I led off talking about my team? We've been working together for 20 years. 20 years. That takes time. We weren't amazing at the beginning. We were pretty good. We're really good now. And you have to go through a lot of stuff together for that. If you read that book that I showed you earlier, The Wisdom of Teams, it takes you on a journey hearing about people from different industries, different anecdotes, where people start to care about each other really more than just teammates, but as humans. And that's really your crossover point. So bring it back to, was it Martin who asked it? You know, like, Chris, how do I know that I'll get there? The moment that it's not just, oh, you know, that's just a teammate, but it's like it's something more. That's how you know you really got there. And a lot of teams don't get there, and that's okay. You're doing the best you can with what you got.
Mm-hmm. So you seem to be super optimistic about everything, right? So have you ever been frustrated about the team? Like you give up and say like they're not ready for, or you just take it, oh, they're not ready. It's a good thing. So well, you know what I mean?
No, I got you. I mean, from an optimistic standpoint, trust me, I'm a pretty positive guy most of the time, but frustrated. It's kind of like if you've ever seen the Avengers and the Hulk says, "You want to know my secret? I'm always angry." I'm frustrated a lot too. I'm a pretty I speak very fast. I'm a mover. I'm a hustler. So it's like, let's go. And so it's very easy to get frustrated. I've never truly like given up, for lack of a better term, because when it comes to, and this is in a personal setting, as in a professional setting, in a hobby setting, if a squad is working together, it really depends on what my part to play in there is. It's like if I'm an integral part of things, and success for me is to try to help the squad as best as I can, that's okay. But I receive questions like this where it's like, how do I change the organization to blah, 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 blah. And some of you are probably thinking that. And the question I would ask you before anything is, I would say, who's asking you to do that? And they go, what do you mean?
Sorry?
I say, who is asking you to change the organization? Because I say, are you busy? Do you have a lot to do? Oh, I've got all these things to do. And this, I go, well, who is asking you to turn this battleship in another direction? And a lot of times I get, no one is. And I say, well, why are you worrying about that? Those are things you have to consider. People want things to do better, but you have to consider first, before you go for extra credit, turn in your assignment. If someone's asking you to do the job, make sure you're doing that, because that might be your part of the system. That's okay. So just, I always ask, who's asking you to do it? If someone's going to hire me to help your organization get better, I know what success looks like. But if I'm just there as a team player, hey, that's okay. But if someone's not asking me to do it, I like to push the needle, don't get me wrong. But if I'm going to spend all my time on extra credit and not turn in my assignment, I'm not doing my job.
What was behind you start writing a book? I mean, writing a book is a lot of work, yeah, etc.
Well, that's not my book.
What was that starter?
Oh, that's not my book.
Oh, that's not your book. I thought
No,
it is.
God, that book, Katzenbach and Smith wrote that book, and that book is from like 19. I wish that was my book. These are people I like, worship. No, I will send you that link. The book that I have, that's coming later. No, that's coming later. But this is just one of the big pieces of the research that I do with teamwork, and it's mostly based on human interaction, stuff like that. So no, that's not mine. No, not at all. That's you can find that on Amazon, and that's like my favorite book.
I see. Okay. Well, I need to read it then.
Oh, it's the best.
I haven't seen it before. So can you share us a story about some inspirational team, like something you're really proud of, some team which makes a big difference?
A team that makes a
place where you can make a big difference in a team, like something inspirational, something like really which you're proud of. Oh, like it doesn't have to be you who did that. I mean, the team which really
okay, yeah, I can. Sure. I got one. So I mentioned that, and this is my team, and I'm not the captain of the ship, but I have a seat at the table, and I enjoy that. So this group that I work with, we create the environment for the most powerful moments in young people's lives to happen. And it is rooted in competition. So for those of you who are watching who like to play video games, it's like that. If you've seen games like Street Fighter, for instance, those games like that. So this might be where some of you are like, I think I know who you are now. Yes, that's me. So putting all that together, we have thousands and thousands of people. And imagine like a sporting tournament where a team plays a team and whoever wins moves on. We would work through all of that and whittle it down to just the last few competitors. And we put them on stage for the world to watch them do what they do best. And it's all organic. All we do is create that environment for these amazing things to happen. And at the end of the competition, we're congratulating people and we're saying, hey, good job. And I'm lucky enough to shake people's hands and say, great job, excellent, well played. And I had one individual once, and this is my team. And there's so many of you. And if any of you watching, hey, I miss you all. But a powerful moment happened a couple of years ago where a competitor stopped me and said, Chris, I need to tell you something. And I said, what's up? He said, 10 years ago, I was watching this on the internet and I saw you give that person right there a medal. And I said, that's what I want to do. I want to make the stage and I want to get a medal from you. And I have worked the last 10 years to get to this moment. This is the happiest moment of my life. And when you hear that, and that like the people around you made the environment that someone could have that much joy, it's the best. It's literally the best. It's the best. And the fact that I get a chance to do that with my squad for thousands of people every single year, not this year. It's the best. I look forward to it every single year. It's absolutely the best. So I don't know if that's the story that you were looking for, but that's the one I'd want to tell.
Thank you. Yes, it is. I have I think maybe last question for you from Marek. Have you prevent burnout of so long collaborating team? Is there any disadvantage in having same team for a long time?
So was it how long to keep the team? I want to make sure I understand the question.
It was a question like if you have a stable team and you don't change it. And then there was this assumption they may go to the burnout because of lack of new members or new influences, new ideas.
Okay, I got it. I thought it was a are we collaborating too much? So I'm sorry, I misheard that. No. I'm a big fan of, as long as there's a purpose and you're looking at that purpose and saying, what are we trying to accomplish and what are we looking at to make that happen? If you really get to the place of what a real team or a high performing team would be, then there's not really a lot of burnout with it. So I had misunderstood the question of how much should we collaborate. I'm a big fan of, if the team is rocking and rolling, like the question we got earlier, let it keep going and have them evaluate what are the skills we need to bring in, what are the changes that we need to make, because a change in purpose could inspire some of those changes. They might have new tools available to them where their working approach could be revisited. But if it's, again, back to the whole, we come in every day and respond to customer tickets as quick as we can. You're going to burn out anyway. So leaving people alone, I would just say use your best judgment on that. I'm not a fan of let's just shake it up for shake it up's sake. There are organizations that go, we have this really great team and let's go ahead and break them apart so we can cross-pollinate all that great knowledge all across the organization. And how many times you think that works? Yeah, not too much. So burnout, I think of that as more of a workload thing, but from a stagnation standpoint, which I think what the question is, ask the team members if they should, is there still even a need for the group to exist? That's the big thing I want to ask.
Thank you very much. It's been super interesting talk about the teams. I still need to process that. It was really cool. And it's time for our break.
Excellent. So, hey, everyone, thank you all so much. I just want to say thanks to everyone. Appreciate it.